I'm way ahead of myself. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Race Tech Speed Tips with Bob and Chad. Today we've got David Stremme with us. David, of course, grew up in South Bend, Indiana, started racing his racing career as an asphalt driver at the age of 15. Quickly moved up to the ASA Late Model Series. You ran a few ARCA shows I've seen. Then soon took your career, went to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And then a couple of years later, you started your NASCAR Cup career with you had over 200 starts in the Cup career. Then 5 years ago, it looks like you and your wife decided to build and start the company Lethal Chassis. Lethal Chassis, building dirt modifieds, of course, has become a great success, very nationally known already in such a very short period of time in the United States and Canada. So, David, tell us the story about how you decided to go from pavement racing to dirt.
Well, I'll try to give you the short version of 2000. Well, I'll go back. I bought my first car from Jeff Taylor. Steve Arpin, I got with him. I said, hey, I'm looking for a modified. They were running them here in the Carolinas. And I'd done a charity event with Kenny Wallace. First ever dirt track I run was Macon, Illinois, and had a blast. And then my wife, who I also met at the time, her father had run sprint cars in Pennsylvania. So obviously her roots are deep into dirt racing. So we tried playing around, really didn't have any expectations. Just we went to the racetrack and just got dirty for a few years. And it was always like Volusia or somewhere big where I could go run. And we were doing our own cup deal, owning that for 3 years. And then in 13, that kind of, I don't know, I'll be honest, I got burned out. Partnerships or sinking ships is what I call them. And we were kind of at a hiatus. I was done with all the cup stuff in 13, and I said, hey, let's go run some dirt cars. So we did. And around that time, I'd purchased a car from another builder, and it was okay. We just didn't, we didn't get the help, didn't get it. We got it late. I couldn't get parts for it. And it wasn't just him. It was a lot of them are like that. So I just we already had equipment and everything. And in 14, I was still messing around with some cup stuff. And I kind of figured out then I was over it. I was just over the NASCAR, just everything going on. And was really burned out at a stage. Still had 3 super late models. I remember I went to Orange County in North Carolina, went and practiced. We were really good, and I loaded up and left. I was like, we're here too long. So anyways, we got more serious on the dirt stuff, and I had equipment. And to be honest, I went up to Labonte's shop, the Longhorn chassis, and I said, hey, give me a center and tail. I don't want no suspension. We'll put our own clip on it. And we built like 3 of them. And I really enjoy, the fabricating part, the welding. We just had a lot of fun and really used a lot of our, what I was normal was asphalt mentality of squaring the car, just a lot of different things. Anyways, all of a sudden we had guys, wanting cars. So we said, okay, we'll build a couple. And we had Strickler in the car. I had a couple other guys, and we were winning races right at the end of that, I was going to say around 14. And all of a sudden, phones ringing, people were wanting cars, and we built 31 the first year, which the Longhorn deal, it was good to get going. And I really, to this day, still didn't plan on building the whole car. It was just a matter of they couldn't feed our supply, their quality. They were going through a big change too, and the quality wasn't very good. And just like everybody else, we just kind of took something and made it better. And so we got about 18, 20 cars from them, and then the rest we built on our own. We're up around 100, and we're at 153 right now on cars. So we put a limit after that first year to 25 to 30. Just kind of depends on existing customers, how they get a car. We only sell them in different packages. I'm not into selling a bare frame and somebody putting a bunch of different parts on it, because then all I'm going to do is stay on the phone all day. But really our mentality turned into is working with different people. More of our customer being a meaningful to us instead of just a number and just selling cars. So it's been a very I wouldn't say it's an easy road by no means. I mean, we're busy. There's no 9 to 5 to it, but we take it very personal. We feel like all our customers are, our friends and family in a way. I talk to them quite a bit, but also we have great vendors like Chad. A lot of different vendors that play a huge part into our program, and people also. We still have, Kevin Carpenter. He's been with me since high school. He's here. Brody Poppy. They're really the only two other full-time guys in the shop besides myself and my wife. Now we have two other contract guys. Cliff, I don't even know how you say his last name. We call him Kickstand Fab. He comes in, does all the tin work, and Matt Smith comes in, helps with some heavy fab. And we've had a few people kind of dabble and do some stuff, but really we try to have fun at it. So it's turned into lethal, and we run it as a business. I mean, my cars are touched last. I don't really get to have a lot of fun as I'd like, but we also, I know what it's like on the other side of, not being able to get parts or help, and we're able to send stuff out. We had boxes going out today like crazy, and been on the phone. We're on the phone all weekend just trying to help guys, to where they can go have fun and they feel like they have a support system.
It's definitely a customer service oriented business, and the people that don't figure that out don't do it super long.
Mm-hmm.
So how's your week been, Chad?
Been good. Yeah, I got to go to Fountain City last week. They had a really good turnout. They had 177 cars, and the place was packed. And we're working on some new stuff, trying to fine tune a few things that we're working on. And it was good to get back again and see all the people. And they had a pretty large event there. USMTS was back in town, so it was pretty cool to get out there and be part of it again.
Yeah, when you and I started doing this, I don't know if this is our 5th episode or how many it is, but it was just kind of a situation where I was bored, you were bored. We got to talk to somebody. If nothing else, let's just talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
And it was working out pretty good, and we got a lot of support. A lot of people really enjoyed it, and it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. It's I'm glad that you were able to be on here with us tonight. David, that's really cool. Got a question here, David. Are you willing to build a sport mod chassis?
I knew that'd be coming. We get a lot of interest in the sport mod, B mod type class, and I'll be honest, I don't have interest just because of the focus. I think it would take off of our A mods or what we're doing now. I don't have any interest. We've had 2 customers, they converted cars, and they're having success with them. But
up in Minnesota.
Yeah, it's still, even like, I mean, we have guys asking us to build late models. I have no interest in doing any of that. This is something that, again, I just feel when you look at other businesses and they start venturing out and doing stuff, I think it loses focus. So, no, we do not at this time. Sorry.
Well, my philosophy back in the old days was always do what you do best and leave the rest for the rest.
Yeah.
And
I kind of also, I'm relatively new still, I feel, to this dirt, but the B mod class, I look at, cost, and I go, man, it's about the same cost as what a mod is, and I don't think that class was really meant for that, So I don't know. It's no interest.
We've got a question, and you can answer us, David, if you want to. If you don't, that's perfectly fine. We do get some of these questions from time to time. Chris wants to know if you enjoyed the music entertainment all night long that year you were at the Super Nationals.
I think what they're meaning, we were parked. I went out with Jason Bolio, and we ended up getting locked in the first night, which I love racing. I grew up around it. I mean, I love it. But that Boone, there was too much racing. I mean, it had rained, and it ended up going till like 4 a.m. I don't know. So we went to bed, and the music, there was a speaker right over our truck, and it played. But the people were great there. I'll be honest. It was. I loved hearing John Logue was talking about the entertainment that used to be on top of the trailers.
Yeah.
And how that kind of got cut out. And I'm into the history of things, so it was really neat to see the whole Boone Nationals, and I think if you've never been there, you need to go. But I'll be honest, I don't even care to go back. There's just too much for me.
Well, now they've added a Saturday show before the Super Nationals. So, like guys like Chad and I, we get the pleasure of being there 8 days.
Oh my, oh my. But
I mean,
it is very. I will say the tech and just the whole atmosphere, just everything is phenomenal. It's really really neat from just everyday racing, just how the format is to even. I mean, there's a lot of racing to where clean racing you can actually you do enjoy it, but it is long. It makes for long days there.
there is a lot of racing, but I'll give those guys a lot of credit, man. I don't know any place else that could pull off the number of races in
Oh,
one night that place pulls off. I mean, it just amazes me every year.
the one thing I will say about Boone, and I wish they would give a school on it, is watching their track prep. You know, we would sit there and that was the biggest thing I was studying is I wasn't driving, but I was taking care of Jason's car, and then Strickler was in our house car that year, and ended up watching them water how much water, how they're running it in, but they can do it in 10 minutes. It's phenomenal. Just very very neat at what they have there.
Yeah, even the other night they actually they farmed a racetrack twice because of course they had it pretty hard to begin with to try to avoid the holes, but that didn't work out. Um, okay, question is, do you recommend running a sway bar with a leaf spring dirt car?
I don't even I wouldn't even know where to start with a leaf spring car. Um, we've been messing with this 4 bar stuff, and it's funny. I watched the big block cars here Friday. It was Friday or Saturday. I don't know what days are running together here at Cherokee, and I was like, I need to run a 3-link car. I think it was really neat. But I'll be honest, Chad could probably help more with that. I have no idea. I know from our asphalt days of running, leaf spring cars, I wouldn't even think about putting a sway bar on.
Yeah, I would on a dirt car. I don't think the conditions are conducive to running a sway bar. It creates too much bind in the car, and with our conditions, where pavement is a whole different deal on that part of it. Um, so next question is for David. Are you ever going to run an IMCA car, or build an IMCA car and run Vegas?
I don't know if I'll go to Vegas. We've been there 3 times now with Jason Bolio. We take care of his stuff. He's out of Canada, and he's made the show a couple times. That's a hard show to make, to be honest. The way track, just the conditions. You're in the desert, and they try to do the best they can. But I've built an IMCA car, and I've run the last 2 years at Batesville. I went to Batesville the first year, and it was awesome. The facility, the tire wear, the fall off. I just really enjoyed that. And Mooney has done a great job there building that program. I think this year now it's going to be in October. But we're actually just getting ready to start on an IMCA car for myself. But like I said, we house Jason's stuff. He's got 2 of them here. We go test them. We do all kinds of stuff with them. And the North Dakota tour, if I was going to go anywhere, would probably be where I'd go. I went up there 2 years ago with Jason, and tracks were awesome. They were slick. They got done. I mean, just everything about it. I loved it, except for the drive.
Fun tour.
It was just too far away.
The drive is the downside to it, just getting there and getting home. But then the drive between the racetracks the next day and racing besides, if you have any damage or something, it can make it a little bit tough. Next question, Logan wants to know, for rod ends, do you like Teflon or do you like greasable?
I'm on the Teflon, but I have I load check mine, and in my personal car I only run them about 12, 15 races, and then I chuck them to the auction pile and put new ones in.
What's your opinion on a lift bar versus a pull bar?
Well, I don't. Last year we messed around with lift bar a little bit, and there's always this thing in open mods of, oh, you got to have a lift bar, you got to have a pull bar. And I'll be honest, when we line up across the country and the guys we got to beat, we know the top guys, and they're pretty much all on pull bars. Um, a lift bar, if you're running big momentum place, I think it's okay. But stop and go, it's hard to beat a pull bar.
Right.
And I can't even get. I was very fortunate. I got to go to Billy Moyer's shop a couple years ago, and he had this Rayburn car and had a pull bar in it. I'm like, because I don't understand why these late models don't put it in there. There's all this traction, and and they're like, oh, we can't do that. And I'm like, why? Okay, why? Tell me why. And they're like, oh, it just don't work. And it's just, again, I come from asphalt background, and we call it a third link, but I'm a pull bar kind of guy. We had that lift bar in, I ripped it out, and I'm done with it. I can care less about it.
Yeah, the lift bar, the concept is just quite a bit different that people don't understand. The lift bar is kind of more of a trying to transfer weight from the front to the back, where the pull bar is more taking the existing weight that's already on the back of the car and putting it to the racetrack. So it doesn't unload the front end as much.
Mm-hmm.
Do you prefer a right front rebound on a soft spring setup for an A mod?
Well, I don't know what you consider, as far as shocks. I think it's a whole package. You got to look at the suspension. You got jack and force. There's a lot of things that play a factor. And I laugh because, I know what I want in shocks and what we look at. And I'm sure, Bob, you know more about this. And I think that shock business is a hard deal. But, just what it works on one car don't mean it works on another brand. And I think you got to look at the whole package and what you're trying to do. It's like I'd watch an episode where Jeff was talking about Taylor, and he said, you run a heavy spring, you run soft spring. It's a combination. It's not just one corner that's going to make it. It's a whole package. So I don't think there's really a right or wrong answer. I think you just need to really work with whatever builder you're working with and just keep an open mind on what's going on. And some people think that 150 on the nose is a lot. Others think that 500 is. It's just, you don't know. And again, you got to look at the circumstances you're running, the horsepower, the grip level of the track. There's so many variables, like I said, that I don't think there's one, Holy Bible type answer,
Do you find that if you back off on the rebound, it's better for the right front to stay compliant? Once again, it's still the whole package.
Yeah, and I'm all about compliant. I look at, to be honest, bleed and everything's grip. I watch these guys, especially, it's funny. The late models go to Charlotte here, and they got the crossover in turn 3, and we were out there doing a Penske test, and I mean, these guys are just piling rebound to it. They're like, I got to get through this bump. I'm like, what are you doing? Let the tire come down. You got to let it work. So again, I think it's just a package, but I'm into definitely compliance. I've been to some rigs and seen some, been able to see some studies, and I mean, anytime you can let other things work, you're going to have some success.
Well, and that's so true, because if you start working on one corner of the car and forget to actually tune the rest of the car, what you think you might gain might actually end up hurting you more. We had a guy, in fact, it was that guy when we were talking before the show started, the guy that ended up running second to your guy there at Boone the other night. If you knew what his right front shock was, you'd shake your head.
Yeah.
This was like the stuff that we ran, 85, 86. I mean, it's a left front shock put on the right front. And I asked the guy, I said, so why did you do that? Well, when we had practice here, the car, he says, it was just like it was getting on the nose too much. So I just took that left front and put that left front on the right front. And he said, it quit getting on the nose. And I'm like, And I watched, and I mean, it did not affect corner entry, didn't affect the mid corner. In fact, I think he actually come off better. So, I mean, it was kind of like back in the old days when we used to run a 6.4 right front shock. I mean, it's like, just when you think you have it all figured out, then somebody throws something like that. Do you ever index the right rear bird cage if you do, when is the best condition to do it in?
Well, I think again, I run very little index, as we have machines like Chad's machine with the I prefer the touchscreen with the masher. Um, you can see a lot more. We're looking at loads. You can look at through your travel. We can see different spring companies, rates, everything, and how their load is being affected in the car. But the first thing you have to do is to me, you got to have a good data and understand what you have and what you're working with. So I think, when you hear people say, yeah, I'm going to index into the spring, well, okay, there's so many other things going on there that you have to realize, like, okay, what's your inch and a half load? What's your 2-inch load number? I mean, and again, we're looking at these things now. The cars are so different. So I don't really, I still think, and people are going to think I'm crazy. I think we can run a single rod on the right rear and be fine. Sometimes there's too much stuff going on here. And the right rear is so hard because you see in compression and the extension side of it that there's a lot of motion going on there. So I think they just have to look at, their whole package of what they're running, the bar symmetry. A great program is what Chad has out with the 4-bar simulation program. I remember calling him and everybody had it on the left rear. And I said, hey, can I do this on the right rear? And he's like, yeah, you're going to see it from the left side. And we've run our simulation through on the right side, so.
Yeah, that software is pretty cool. You can definitely do some changes and see that index and what it does there. The right rear, I'd say that right rear cage index is a timing issue. If you're going to index into the spring, it's just going to transfer the weight quicker, stiffen that right rear spring more on entry, faster, right? I mean, that would tighten the car on entry, probably just like stiffening the spring.
And if you do that, I sure wouldn't want to do it on a rough racetrack.
No.
With you.
Anything that you do on the right rear, you've got to keep things really basic if you're on a rough type racetrack, because you hook that right rear and you're hanging on. And about the time you hook the right rear and you stand on the gas and then the left rear comes into play, we know what direction it's turning.
I think the one thing is key is people have to understand the tools that are out there and using them, and still being very conscious of the environment. And just like you're saying, Bob, if it's rough, you don't want to be like that. If it's smooth and slick, that's what's great about dirt racing is the variables and how everything changes. There's no sim program people are going to write, to go, hey, this is the setup you need. You got to look and really still go off of that information of how the track is. Just like you're saying, Boone, I'm sure guys had different setups and different cars were running well there. So.
Yep. If you have a left rear bite number that you look for at static, how or when does the left rear load number come into play while at full droop in dynamic?
Well, I'll be honest. I think it's been 2 years since we've even had a car on a scales. We don't even. I mean, you can set them by bite. We still probably have a couple guys do it, but all our cars are set on load numbers, and when we go to the rig, we can give that dynamic wedge number. But you got to look at a crate car versus an open car is so different, and a Wasota car is different, and a USMTS, because of not just horsepower balance or grip level in the tires, it's also an aero balance too. So there's so many variables thrown into play. I got some guys running negative bite in the cars, and again, it has to do with the whole package. I got other guys that got way more bite than I'd ever run, but that's again their condition and where they're running. So I think again you need to consult with your manufacturer and really be up on what's going on. But it goes back to also conditions. I don't want to have a big high wedge number or high bite number when it's heavy and really rough. So I think you just need to look at the circumstances of what's going on. People think we're crazy. And again, a crate car, if I took our crate setup and put it in our UMP car, there's no way that UMP car would even make a corner. But again, tire grip level, horsepower, aero, everything's, as far as just different.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, if you take an IMCA car with that IMCA Hoosier in a crate motor versus an open with soda car with a 5 inch or 6 inch or 7 inch, whatever spoiler they have, and a soft sidewall tire, it's daylight and dark.
Yep.
What is your opinion on an IMCA sport mod of running 3 to 4 inch offsets, right rear wheel, and what bar angles do you suggest? I know some brands are wanting the right rear angle at 16 to 18 degrees. Well, I'm not a big fan of that 4 inch wheel. If you've got to stick a right rear wheel and you bring that right rear wheel in towards the center of the car more, it's going to make the car more sensitive. Yeah, the driver's going to feel great. He's going to think that he's just got side bite up to wherever. But the problem is over the course of time, it's going to affect that tire more. And so, in my opinion, I'm not a real big believer in that. I would rather see them do something different to create some side bite. The right rear angle. That right rear angle would be great to qualify with. If you're on a racetrack that's fairly slick, that right rear angle might be a little too much. If you have a left rear, we already did that one.
That's the same guy. I think he's just talking about like why do you focus on just reading that question, trying to read his mind. I think he's trying to figure out why you have a bite number on the scales and you're focusing on your droop load, which I think in today's world we focus more on the droop load than the scale number, correct? We want to know what we got at max chain instead of on the scales. Like if you have 200 pounds of droop load and you'd have whatever you would have at your ride height on the scales.
I tell people all the time, and again, I try to look at history and how things evolve. It used to be you'd take a jack under a car and you'd go, well, I want 3 inches from the right rear to the left rear, and that's my number, and then all of a sudden scales evolved, and then we started using grain scales, and over time now we have load sticks and smashers and everything else. So it's the tools and what we have at our accessibility. It's just like we're going to go to the Penske pull down rig here this week. It would do us no good to go to that pull down rig if we didn't have the correct data of knowing where our car rides on, and meaning corner entry, exit, the middle, again, types of conditions we're in. So I think they have to look at, it's just reference numbers. You can sit there and do the math and understand, okay, hey, if I got my spring, 100-pound spring is compressed 2 inches, it's 200 pounds of drop load, But the one thing that's hard to simulate is engine torque and a lot of other stuff. So just really it's all about referencing and understanding what you have. And like I said, I know some guys, just talking to them, they've had negative bite in the cars. They put on the scales after they've been tuning on it, and they're like, oh, I can't believe it. I said, hold on, just relax, and again, it's the tools that we have at our accessibility now and I think a lot of people get spun out by hearing all these numbers, well, what's this drop load here, or how do you even do this? And you got to kind of explain to them. So again, I go back to the old jack in a socket, and you have this wedge number, and guys have done it for years. Sprint car guys still do it with them torsion bar cars, So it's just a different way of measuring stuff is what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's very well explained.
The only reason I bring that up because we went to Florida. We had 29 cars there, customers, and this was the last few years. We've been 26, 29 all over the country. They go there, and it's so hard because everybody reads a tape measure different. They set their scales up different. So Chad has come out like with the load stick. It makes things so much easier, but we have to have our job to make sure everything's fixtured correctly, everything repeatability. But now these guys can go out there and just set their loads. I can give them the information. We're doing the homework for them. And they have jobs they work, or they got businesses or whatever. This is about them having fun, so we just try to make it easy for them. And again, that's what we're doing. It's just a different way than just scaling the car is what it is.
Yep. Next question is, do you prefer a turn stub car or a squared up car?
Squared up. I'm always squared up. I'm an asphalt guy, so it's reference numbers. The guys come into. I had a guy doing these videos. I don't know, he was bored through this COVID deal, and he's talking about how he's squaring the car and everything. Look, we've been looking more at what the car is in posture, or at race height, I guess you'd say. So now we're kind of, as far as our housing's out of square, because the rear steer we've been playing with and stuff, but my 4 tires most of the time are squared up, where they're at. And a lot of that comes back from my asphalt days. I fought cars. I mean, they'd be off a little bit front ends, and I mean, I don't know, it's just magnified more. So that's what, when I started doing this, I remember guys had clips turned an inch and a half. I'm like, what are they doing, But again, that's just what I believe. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just, what we've had success at.
Yeah, well, it goes back to the package.
Yep.
Some builders might build something different, but once again, when you talk about a turn stub or a squared up stub, that's only a small amount of the equation, because we don't know where all the rest of the stuff is at.
It's the same way with guys go, hey, you're on straight up housing, you're on offset housing. Are your right sides lined up? Are your left side tires lined up? There's so many things. And Chad knows this coming from the asphalt. I mean, it was like when we go to set them cars up every time. I mean, we're talking very minute changes. I remember talking to Junior Hanley, very successful asphalt guy, and we were moving the housings in our cars. We'd go run IRP and all these, and we were always running. We'd run the right rear out a quarter to the right front. That's at center, which you take in effect camber, everything else. And he's like, well, sometimes I just move it a little. That don't mean it's set there. You can go and move your housing. I'm like, man, it makes sense, So when we'd go to Anderson, Indiana, we'd move it, a little tighter place. So again, there's nothing set in stone, but we knew where all our stuff was at.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And that's kind of the thing that, like, Chad and I talk about in the classes, is learn your race car, know the race car, understand what this stuff does. You got all winter to learn when you move this bar, this does this. When you move this, it does this. That kind of thing. Just to understand what's going on. And most generally, a common sense decision is going to be a pretty good one. Anything new or exciting we need to be talking about, Chad?
Well, on the maintenance front, we've had some issues last weekend. We get a few races in here, and guys are trying to find problems. And I had a customer call me and say that his car was junk and he couldn't figure it out. And it was really good at the end of the year last year, and he just was struggling. And I said, well, you're missing something maintenance-wise. There's got to be something wrong. And I said, you got to go over the car, front to back, top to bottom, everything. And it turns out the right front shock shaft was broke, and the right front brake line was pinched off. So as we get into the season here, we really, really need to focus on that maintenance plan. I know that Bob and I, we preach that all the time. I'm sure David's stuff is pretty top-notch, but we get rolling into the season here, and the cars that are winning are the ones that are winning in the shop. You got to have your stuff right when you leave, and that's the biggest thing that we see.
Yep. This question is for you or me, Chad. A USRA B-Mod, what's the advantage of running a bent left trailing arm? Well, the only advantage is clearance.
Yeah, it's just a clearance deal. I don't even know what B-Mod, does a B-Mod really need one?
I would have no idea why.
The A-Mods run it because the cars travel so much, they hike so much, and then the cages tip over, and they can run into the trailing arm on the suspension cage housing. So the bend just gives a little bit of clearance in there. But on a B-Mod, I'm not sure that you would need it. If you run your car through motion and it does look like it's going to hit, I would put a bent one on there. It doesn't. The link doesn't know that it's bent. It could be a Z and it wouldn't know. The force is point to point, bolt to bolt. So there's no advantage to a J, a Z, a Q, or whatever. It only knows where them bolt holes are on the axle and the chassis.
Another question for you, David, and you can answer this or you don't have to. Do you build cars with Docal tubing?
I do not use Docal tubing. Everybody knows we use Pro Moly. We've done the last 2 years at PRI. We've done seminars with the Pro Moly, and Pro Moly meaning Pro Moly, not Chrome Moly. It is a 4130, but it's a different blend. Plymouth Tube makes the Pro Moly, and a lot of people be surprised. Top Fuel cars, sprint cars, there's late model teams. Everybody, there's a lot of people have used it. We did our research, and I was able to get around some really good people, and got some tests back, and looking at the studies of it, of independent studies, I should say. And we have cars. I mean, we had 2 cars flip last year. Schrader's was one of them at 141. Flipped 5 times. We put it in the jig. All we had to do is put 2 underrails in it. Still racing. I've seen other manufacturers, and a lot of people, they're on this kick, and I'm not against, they're putting bars around their heads and doing more of this. That's fine, but understand the type of material you're using. A lot of these guys use cheaper stuff, whether it's Chinese or a soft DOM. I mean, there's so much into the metal, and everything starts there. We can bolt all this stuff on it we want, but the frame is everything. So my personal car, which is 3 years old now, we won the Rudiman race in the fall with it. It's got 130 nights on it, and I got a brand new one sitting next to it, and it's just as good as that one. I got customers. Dan Ebert just won this past weekend. He has a car, that thing's a year and a half old. I don't know, it's got 100 races on it, still winning with it. And he's got a brand new one sitting there. But the Pro Moly is something that we really believe in. Our partners at Stock Car Steel have been a big help with it. Every piece of tubing, every one of my cars, I know the heat treat number, I know, which is like a serial number in it. It's just a very, very precision tubing. Now, Rocket has success with dough coil. There's nothing wrong with dough coil other than consistency. Where the seam is, it's a welded tube, and that seam, studies have shown time and time again, where that seam is changes the rigidity of the car. So, Pro Moly is a drawn tube. I believe in it. I mean, I wish I'd had it right here. We're in the shop. I'd have to go get it. I mean, we got a piece of 65 that's bent all the way around. That thing ain't stressed, ain't nothing. I mean, it is phenomenal material, and I think we'll have cars. I mean, we'll probably have cars hit 400 races with it. Top Fuel cars, they were getting 300 runs out of the Chrome Moly cars. Are up to 600, and they think they can get 900 runs out of them. So again, it's the material, but a lot of builders don't want to use it because of cost. I mean, it's not cheap. But again, you pay up front or you pay in the end. You're going to go buy a car 3 times or you're going to buy one once. So I had a car, and I'll be done with kind of this. I got wrecked in Florida, a brand new car. I thought this thing was killed. We put it in the jig. All we did is put a horn on it, and that's it. This thing is, I mean, it's just, the material is phenomenal. So I highly recommend it. I know Jeff Taylor's, he's building a new car out of it. I mean, I tell all my competitors, I mean, I want to see them be safe, and it's some good stuff.
Another question for you, David. Do you have requests to build a car for someone who's in a wheelchair?
We have built. Matter of fact, we have his second car going together right now. Chris Morris out of Texas. He ended up getting injured in a motorcycle accident. He was motocross, I should say, testing. And we built him a car last year. He ended up getting 6 wins, very competitive. It was a lot of fun. So what we did is, and they helped us a lot too. His dad did. He's paralyzed chest down. So you got to think, he has no feeling. I mean, it's all visual. And he's driving one-handed. He's got another hand here. He's got like where it pushes forward with the brake, and he's got the throttle on his, like a motorcycle. And we actually enjoyed building it. We got another car we're building him right now. He's going to have 2 of them. So it was a little tough at first, but we've got it down. So it's not that hard, really. And they're not much different, to tell you the truth.
We've got a customer here that just talked about the fact that he tried the left front chain last week out in California and said it really worked. What's your opinion on the left front chain?
I mean, I got guys, they want to have that thing chained up all the time, and other guys hate it. So I think it's conditions, and I mean, it's so funny. I had a guy call me this weekend. We had, at a track, we had 3 customers there, and one guy's struggling. The other 2 guys are like, man, my car is pretty good. And this guy was so tight. I'm like, no wonder why you're sliding. It was too tight, and it comes down to is your style and what you like. I do like it sometimes the left front to be pinned up, but if it's Baja rough, I ain't pinning no shot.
Oh, no, no, no. If it's rough, you don't want to limit anything
Yeah, it's just
because
like
your
bump stops.
job is just going to get a whole bunch harder.
Yeah, and it's like bump stops. There's guys, um, they like on our open stuff. We put them on bump stops. They can't drive it. They don't like it. It's too finicky, and so we just go back, conventional stuff. And so I mean, it's not a. You see all kinds of stuff win. I mean, it's not like one certain thing is the proven deal. But there's times I do like that IMCA come up with a chain deal. It's cheap, simple. Chad's got a great product there where you just clamp it on the front hoop and you can run it right down that stock lower. You bolt a clevis on and you're set instead of doing stuff with these shocks and everything else. I mean, it's a great opportunity. They kind of smartened up and got that allowed in there.
Cody's got a question. What is the advantage of zero index on the left rear, and do you run that on your cars?
I knew this question was coming because this is like
common question for everybody.
So I look
every week.
Every week.
What's funny is you can have a standard cage and be zero index. I mean it's not like I think what it is everybody starts. Chad made these new plates and everybody's like, oh man, this is zero index. Like, time out here. You can still do zero index with a standard cage. So I think again, there's situations where the zero index is good. I think that the old conventional, if you want to be indexed in the spring hard, is fine. And you'll see that. That's one of the things we're going to test this week on the rig. We want to kind of see if we can simulate some different bar loads, kind of looking at some stuff without. It's going to be hard without the engine torque and everything. But I don't necessarily think there's one thing. I think these guys get caught up in all this terminology, and these guys, Shyrock's running this, or Jeff Taylor's running this, or look, just run and do what's best for you. I've seen guys with a log chain on their car and run good with it. So I like it, but you can do it with standard stuff. I mean, we run both ways.
Another question. Logan wants to know, when making an adjustment at the racetrack, are you most likely to adjust loads, move bars, or change shocks?
I'm not a big, I probably have a total of 6 shocks in my trailer for my stuff, personally. I don't change shocks a lot. I mean, the Penske guys were direct with them. Matter of fact, I was in Florida and I took them down I just want to have it checked out, and that thing was a year and a half old, hadn't even been touched. I don't, we just stay up on our stuff. We dyno them, make sure they're good. But as far as loads, we do mess a lot with loads. When you think about it, your bar angles, there's loads too through your springs and everything else. So, again, it comes to the conditions, and you have to look at the racetrack. I tell my guys all the time, they come up and they're like, or they'll call me, hey, my car's doing this. Okay, well, what's the track doing? Is it dry? Is it tacky? Look at the conditions you're racing in and what's going on, and then make your adjustments from there. Kevin, who helps me on the car, we were in Florida this year, and I mean, I sit and I watch the track, stopwatch, everything, and all of a sudden you can see the track's rubbering up, and I come running down. I'm like, we got to start changing this, free it up. I mean, that track's picking up a second, the grip level's changing, and your loads are changing. I mean, there's so many, again, variables you got to adjust to it. So, again, you got to look at conditions, and what works on one car doesn't work for another. So, yes, we do a lot of changes through the night especially if a track slows down 3 seconds, you got to do changes and adjust for the loads.
What is the most effective change you can do when the racetrack starts changing from tacky to slick on an IMCA car? IMCA modified.
People are going to laugh when I say this, but I do a lot with weight in the car, weight placement. We don't, in our IMCA stuff, we don't move bars as much with the load. Again, that's, I think, the horsepower. We might adjust some shocks a little bit, but I move lead a lot in the car. I mean, lead is huge, and I think it's more than what people think it is. I get on all my open guys all the time about their motor weight and everything else. You know, guys like, well, my motor's only 20 pounds heavier. I'm like, yeah, but it's up front and you can't move it. You know, so um, yeah, you can mess with your depends what front springs you're running and everything. You can mess with your loads there. Maybe your 1.5 inch number, 2 inch number. You can just it's depends on the setup and what you're trying to achieve. But we don't move bars and do a lot of that other stuff.
Another question for you, David, is Derek wants to know if you have any dates when you're going to be racing at Plymouth, Indiana.
I don't know if we don't really have a schedule that we run on. Plymouth has been doing a great job. My brother races there a lot. They just had a race this weekend. You know what I love about dirt racing? We might be in Illinois like last year. We were up there racing some Hell Tour stuff, and weather was terrible. We went clear to Ohio, ended up coming back to West Virginia, and then going to Indiana to race. That's what's great about dirt racing. And the way this whole COVID deal is in the East Coast right now, it's harder to race some of our UMP stuff. So that's why I said, hey, we're going to hurry up, get a IMCA car done, and probably go out there and let it sit at Schrader's shop and try to go run some, through the Midwest there, just because the tracks are more open and you can watch the weather and go. So we don't really have a set schedule. I just say follow us on social media and you can kind of see where we're going.
Back to the torque arm. From your experience of whatever you did run on the torque arm, how do you tune a torque arm?
Well, I had went to, I won't reveal my source, but he's a very good late model driver. And I just started quizzing them. And we started messing around with different lengths. We built like 6 different just bar configurations and loads, and we messed with the compliance of just the lift bar itself. We built this rig, kind of test it, and believe it or not, we come out about the same length as our pull bar. It was just a different way we were getting the leverage. Like you said, it pulled more for the front. I didn't like it as much. I felt like the pull or the lift bar was a little more inconsistent than our pull bar, and maybe because we haven't run it as much, but it definitely takes load off front tires, and we moved it. I know one thing, I'd put bump stops, we had all kinds of stuff in there. I didn't notice much difference with it, as far as actually on the shock and doing stuff. Heck, I even put just one of Chad's eliminators on there with a spring. We took the whole shock off, and it didn't do that much.
Well, and the thing that people don't understand, like you talked about a couple, 3 questions later about the aerodynamics of these cars. Well, you look at the aerodynamics of a late model car, and I can see where the torque arm might be more of an advantageous to them because the front end stuck so good anyway with the aerodynamics of the car. Where with a modified, you can build the most aerodynamic nose you can build, and you're still not going to have square inches of downforce that you have on that late model car.
Yeah.
It's totally different. On another sport mod, trying to keep left front down and stable, running a 175 right rear on the outside of the frame rail, wide spring base. And question for David, how is it feel to have RT on your team?
It's pretty good. Ricky has done a great job. He's a heck of a racer, his family, everybody. And I feel like it's worked out well where we can supply him with product and support. And he's also supplying us with information. It's not just Ricky, it's all our customers. It's how everybody works together. And, we can't do this on just one person or even 2 people. It takes a whole team effort, and that's where all our customers play a huge factor. But Ricky it's nice. Like when we were at Batesville on Thursday, we had a pretty good car there, myself, and he ended up winning. We run second, but we had a whole 2 different setups. We could really compare, and I'm always trying to work on stuff, and we were able to in the main event. He won, and I wasn't very good. We fought a very loose condition, but it was nice to be able to talk to him. His feel and feedback is is really, really sharp, and I was happy to see him get his late model win this weekend. He deserves it, and it really, he deserves a full-time late model ride. You know, if he can pick that up, it'd be neat to see that.
Yeah, no doubt about that. He is definitely a very highly skilled racer, and a lot of fun just to talk to, because you don't really don't know where it's going, but you usually walk away and you're scratching your head and you're thinking about something. What do you think of the right rear chain? Well, I'll let you have that one, Chad. You get this one every week.
Well, the right rear chain is, like I always say, standing on the tip of a sword waiting for bad things to happen. I don't know if Stremme's run it before, but it's a tuning device. You know, we talk about both sides of that right rear when you're climbing the bars, having that chain there to hold the tension on the spring, but also clamping it down too tight in the rough and the chop can be a catastrophic fail. So I don't know how tight you tighten yours up, or if you've played with that at all. Or
I remember you called me and said, "Hey, you run a chain?" I said, "We did it one time. We did away with it. It's like a double-edged sword, and it's a
Yeah.
deal."
Yeah, if you had a right rear chain chained down at Boone the other night, oh boy,
Yeah.
that would have been a heck of a show. And I'll have to laugh. I had one customer that, I mean, his car was off the ground about as much as it was on the ground. And he came in from the feature and I said, "So what do you think?" And he was just smiling ear to ear. And he said, "Man, that was fun." And I'm like, "Really? Okay. We're good here. I'll talk to you next week." Anyway, David, do you have any ambitions to go to California and race?
Boy, that's a long haul there.
That would be a trip.
We do have Logan Drake is out there, one of our customers, and he's got 2 cars now. Maybe I can get him to let me drive the other one, but it's really I don't really want to go out there. If I want to go anywhere, it's at North Dakota is where I want to go race. I mean, great, it is just fun. But California, I do watch like the Bakersfield and Kern County and those places, and they got some really good racers out there. I mean, that Dotson's out there, and I mean, there's some strong guys that have gotten better, and it's just too far for me to go though.
Question: USRA B mod, right rear spring on the rear end or behind? Pros and cons. Well, we have had all kinds of different experiences with that over the years. When you mount the spring, especially on the right rear, if you're on top of the housing, keep in mind the spring, all it really does is hold the car up. If you're in front or behind, it's influenced on the amount of rotation that the axle has, whether you load the spring or you unload the spring. So if you're behind the spring, you go into the corner and the rear end loads that spring a little bit as you back off the throttle, it creates a tight situation. Well, then the second you get on the throttle, what can happen is it can go from tight to loose really quick, and then actually give a little bit of a looseness in the middle, and then traction back up. So it just all depends on the tires. It just kind of depends on the driver too. If you're driving a racetrack that's a stop and go, super, super slick place, that right rear spring behind the housing is going to be money. I'll guarantee it, because it's going to have traction.
When you say, Bob, a lot of places are like what you're saying, track. If you're at a stop and go, if you're at a place where you're on the fuel steering in, I mean, I think a lot of that would play a factor, wouldn't it?
A big factor. Like if you've got, like, say it was, well, it's like a UMP type tire. If you had that particular tire, I still like it being in front, because I think the driver has more control. It's more throttle control. The rear end's going to load and load. It's just like a 4-link car with the spring in front. As it goes through its motion, it's always putting spring load into the spring. Behind, it actually can take spring load off of the spring for a split second and create some of those conditions. But yeah, it's very indicative to the type of car. Like on our IMCA stuff, on our sport mod stuff, there would be a lot of times with our tire, if we had the spring behind the housing, it'd be great. But that's going to also be the guy that's toting the left front wheel down the straightaway a foot. And then when he gets to the other end, well, who knows what's going to happen.
I have a question on this. Again, the 3-link, the sport mod, B mod stuff, I don't really I don't stay up on. But I have a question for Chad. Is your center pole stuff, or your what I'm talking about, like what they're running on asphalt, is that legal for the B mod stuff?
I think they can. I mean, we do a little bit of it on the left rear where, like our Shaw style plate, we move the arm forward to center line to get the motion. Where on, the asphalt cars put it on the right rear, we take motion away from that right rear. Um, but we haven't tested that, but maybe we will. Maybe we will now.
I think it's a huge. I mean, just seeing from the asphalt side of things where all that was at. I went back and run a Seneca car a couple years ago for Adam Terry, a friend of mine, and had all the, I call it a live 3 link and all this stuff, and boy, it was some traction. And
Yeah.
I've said all along, I think that's something that'd be pretty neat on dirt. And I've wondered with these B mods and sport mods and everything, is especially you've got a lot more of that product there, if it's been on there or not.
Next question. Our old buddy, one of your buddies and one of my buddies, Joey Walsh, wants to know, what do you feel is the most important part of the corner to focus on? Entry, middle, or exit?
Well, Joey has done I will say hello, Joey. I always enjoy conversations with him. He's very intense and has actually helped our program through the years quite a bit. I use the old saying, for every action, there's a reaction. So obviously the entry is the biggest part. I feel like every time I always hear a driver say, I ain't got traction off, I ain't got this, but you don't talk about how tight he is on entry. So for every action, there's a reaction.
Yeah, that's another subject that we talk about in the schools. I have a half of a corner up on the wall, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And for 2 days, we talk about phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, because I don't care how good you're off the corner. If you don't get in good, the race is won in the middle of the corner. If you don't get through phase 2 and have a lot of speed through phase 2, it's going to be more difficult. For a rookie modified driver, back that down, Garrett. For a rookie modified driver learning the chassis, what's the most important area to focus on learning first on setup?
I'd say do not pit race so much and just try to listen to one or two people. I think that's the biggest thing. These guys get listening to multiple people in the pits, and then they get driving different tracks. Just stick to a few tracks. Stick to just some simple changes. First of all, go to your guys' school and just get some really basic information and listen to what other racers are saying, and you'll be able to learn, quite a bit. I think that's the biggest thing. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy, where we listen to so many people, or you see stuff on social media and you do all this. I call it fishing lures a lot. There's a lot of fishing lures out there. You got to have this product and got to have this, but just stay basic and standard, and then once you get to a point you feel like you maximize, then keep going outside the box.
Okay, so now all of you that are online here that have went to our schools, you heard it from David Stremme, the same thing that we preach for 2 days. Keep the thing basic, tune on it very moderately, and race it.
And stay in your own notebook.
Yeah, stay in your own notebook. And the thing, and the sad part, even about what this particular deal here, you will ask or answer a question to the best of what we think the question is. But if somebody else reads it in some other form of mind, well, Stremme said this. Well, wait a minute. You didn't get the whole conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. So, Chad, this one's for you. What's the one tool you sell that someone shouldn't go to the racetrack without? Oh, geez. You're going to need the whole catalog.
Well, we make a lot of important stuff, but in today's world right now, the way we're tuning with the load stick, I would have to go with the load stick or a smash machine, and having both really is the ideal situation. But the last 2 weeks, man, we've been testing something new and cool, and I can't talk about it. It's going to be revolutionary. I'm very, very excited about it. I just want to make sure that I got her dialed in before we announce it. We'll probably do it here on the show.
Well, this will give us something to look forward to.
Well, you make sure I get one. You can send it.
Yeah, it's been a rough couple weeks trying to leave the racetrack with it. That's how cool it is. So,
And I'm right there with you, David, because I'm on him all the time. Why did I not know about this?
Yeah,
I
but
hear this from my customer. What?
that's the nice thing about Chad, and I will say, because I'm very, I've told a couple of vendors they can pack sand because they're not very, respectful with how you talk and very openly about your maybe setups or just pieces of that you're trying to come up with. And Chad is very respectful. He has a lot of different builders that he supplies with, and I don't ever hear him once say, "Hey, this guy's doing this or this," and you can ask him, and he's like, "Hey, he won't say," and that's fine. That's great. That's how I've even threw some stuff out there, tested him, see if what he'd say, and you just have to. There's a fine line you walk in this business, and
Yep.
it's the same way I had 4 Wasota drivers. I mean, we had 4 guys up there at the race this weekend, and I mean, I'm on the phone with all of them, but you cannot go, "Oh yeah, hey, so and so's running this or this guy's running this." You got to be respectful. So I really appreciate that, Chad, and how you carry yourself in this business.
thank you. That means a lot coming from you.
Chad does an awesome job. There's no doubt about it. It's nice to make sure that you're dealing with people with integrity.
And trust people out there that don't have it.
Oh boy. Now that you have been racing dirt, now which is more enjoyable for you to race, dirt or asphalt?
That's it's a very easy question to answer, and I love dirt. I've had a couple truck teams want me to go to Martinsville. Had one wanting me to go to Daytona. A couple Xfinity teams and just back marker teams, and even some super late model guys. I just have no interest. I will say the Snowball Derby was going on this year, and here in the park, there's 3 teams, and we have Port City and Rowdy. They build super late model cars, and I got the itch. I was like, oh man, I want to go down there. I mean, I was getting anxious. Well, then I seen they were there for 5 days and doing all the practice, and I said, I'm done. I don't want no part of it.
It's $16,000 worth of tires.
Listen, I went 2 years, okay, in 09 and 10, and spent $25,000 going there. I mean, it's crazy. And I will say, over the last month and a half, we've had more phone calls from asphalt guys asking about dirt modifieds and doing stuff because everybody's just tired of the time and the money it's taken. And listen, asphalt racing is going to always be in my heart, but it's just hard to go do it. I'm not that mad at my money, is what Kenny Schrader says, and I agree with him.
Well, you know that when I was helping Brett Moffitt when he was a development driver for Joe Gibbs, that was the thing that used to irritate me so much, was the fact that I'd get home late Sunday night and I'd be leaving Wednesday morning again. And then you would sit there on the wall watching what was being done or what wasn't being done. And since I was just a dirt guy, God forbid you say anything about the car because you don't know nothing. You're just a dirt guy. And I'm thinking to myself, I did that 1 year because I promised them I'd do it. Never again. Never again. You can go, like I said, I went to Boone the other night. I left home at 3 o'clock and I was home by 11. So it doesn't get any better than that. Rusty also wants to know, do you focus on ride heights or spring smash on the rear and also on the front?
Well, it's like I said, it's probably been a little over 2 years or longer. We haven't even scaled a car. I mean, you obviously have tech heights. You got to watch your deck heights, but it all goes with loads and the track. On the asphalt side, you can really look at, I'll use, for example, like a Winchester Speedway in Indiana. You'd have massive loads. Then you'd go to IRP, you wouldn't have any load. And that's what I watch that on dirt. Batesville, you take like this weekend, some IMCA guys are going. There's a lot of load at Batesville. There's a lot of grip level early on, but throughout the race you lose a lot too. So you got to really watch, the track grip level, and I think that's a big thing. So loads are huge. Obviously, keeping notes, staying up on what you have in the car. I mean, so many guys, they'll be racing the same track every week, and they're like, well, yeah, I haven't scaled my car in a couple weeks, or they haven't even put a load stick, nothing. Hey, go back through and make sure you're still on your number. They might be fighting an issue and didn't know what they had in the car. So ride heights are, again, it just depends on the track and where you're going. We're kind of all over the place on stuff, and it's really hard for my customers to get to understand that. They're used to the other way of just saying, hey, here's a ride height number, but it's all loads now and collecting that notebook.
Well, we are up against the time. A couple things I wanted to say, and I want to make sure, David, you have a really strong endorsement from Mr. Wallace. He just wanted to stop in and say hi and say Lethal Chassis has the best all-around service in dirt racing. When I order something, I get it, and when I wreck the car, it gets fixed. That's all a racer can ask for. Thank you, David and Ashley and the Lethal team.
Well, thank you, Kenny.
Russ also wants to say the same type of thing. Been around a lot of race cars in the past, and David's stuff is high quality. So, David, once again, I sure appreciate you coming on here tonight. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. Of course, Chad and I always have a good time. So I'm glad you could join us.
Hey, thank you. And again, thanks, Chad, for his partnership with us. I mean, we have a lot of really good vendors that help us with our cars and product. And that's a big thing that, I feel in this sport, a lot of people go after just money or what they can fill their pockets with. And I'm about quality, and that's the biggest thing is having our customers with the best stuff that's out there. So, and I'm going to have to check out one of these schools you guys are at. I know you guys get big attendance, but I think there's a lot of things that people can learn from them that they could take home with them. So whether it's in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Iowa, wherever you guys have that school, then you make sure they check that out.
They're a lot of fun. There's something to do in the wintertime. And since we talked about earlier, and I won't mention it now, but you might be at the Pennsylvania school next year.
Yeah, I hope so. We'll see. I hope real quick before we leave, the one thing I would like to see, I know we're cut short for time.
I don't have anywhere to go.
I wish modified racing would get more on the same page. I know all these guys, whether it's UMP, IMCA, USMTS, WSOTA, get the cars closer. So you have, right now is a perfect example of, if a guy was in Illinois, he wanted to go to Minnesota and race, he'd go. They're not, our chassis is the same on all of them.
Exactly.
Let's get this dang bodies and just, I don't care, we could all run stock lowers, we can do whatever it is, I don't care. Just if they would all get together, put their egos aside and just work together. It's fine to have different tires or shocks or whatever, it don't matter, but some of this stuff is just crazy. And I really wish you look at late models, you can go run a IMCA late model, change a motor or do something, but they can still run a World Outlaw show. With our stuff, you just can't. And I don't understand that. I really wish they would work on that. And my other thing is I wish they would come up with a fabricated clip and do how did an ASA on asphalt side. Just have one vendor build it. Everybody buys from them. Make it the same weight, height, everything the same. Heck, let the sanction bodies sell them and put them on these cars. We'd save so much money. We'd cut the cost in half on this. But we could go on all day about this. Again, my background is very short in dirt racing. I just wish that they would come closer on this. It's just kind of crazy and it's just really rules that are nothing that they can make closer. So my rant's done.
Amen.
That's okay. I can't disagree with you. I've been saying the same thing since 1980, but hopefully you will get lucky and they'll hear you.
You don't give me no hope, Bob.
Oh man. There's days. Well, you talked about. I watched a video where you talked about something you were involved in, and you kind of got tired of the politics side of it. And I really had to laugh because, the time when I spent with Brett was a lot of fun, but for what it took to have fun, it wasn't worth it. Yeah. Anyway, back to this. That's the only downside. It's involved in every shape or form of the industries, and you hit the nail on the head. It's egos involved, and if we can get rid of them and make it simple, because it would be pretty neat to have a race car where a guy could take a car and go to North Carolina or go to North Dakota or wherever.
It's really just numbers. Look at numbers. Modified racing. Nothing against late models. I would love to drive one, but I am not going to put the time in. If you don't have 3 or 4 guys working on a late model now, it's hard to go be competitive. And people see that more and more on weekly racing, and they go, "Oh, these mods." And let's face it, the modified has become a little cooler. These guys like them, and we need to do a better job as the industry leaders. They need to get together, and let's try to. I'm not saying make them all the same rules. Let's just get a little closer. There's some really simple things, and I feel that if they talk to builders, if they talk to not just one racer, talk to multiple racers, and it'd be an easy thing. When you look at the late model as a perfect example, they can pretty much go race anywhere, and they don't have to change much, and again, take tires out of it. The tires are like changing oil, it's easy to put on, but
that's immaterial.
Yeah, I mean, there's just things that I look at what's best. Right now, there's people sitting in Illinois would love to go race, and they could be filling up Iowa and Wisconsin, Minnesota. I mean, that's what's great. Like you said, Bob, you can go to racetrack and show up at 5 o'clock in the evening. I don't mind driving 4 hours to go race.
Yeah.
But we can only hope and pray that can happen, and maybe they listen to you. But 1982, it just, whew.
Well, hopefully it'll still happen in my lifetime. So good luck on that. You might want to keep pushing.
I've almost, this is no joke, I've almost called Chaz Howe and said, "Look, send me one of them fabricated clips and we'd build a car because he's doing it on the asphalt side, but I don't know. They'd probably raise hell if I showed up at a track like that."
Yeah, just don't forget about the politics I talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes you don't want to be on the wrong side of that deal. It can be weathering.
Hey, my dad said it best. Everything comes down to money and sex, and that's the truth.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree with the money part of it. The rest of it, I'm not even going to go there. All right. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it, David.
Hey, thank you guys again.
Yeah, have a good night.
You too.